everyone. For this Music Talk Tuesday, I thought it would be interesting to address musicals. I believe somebody asked me a little bit a while back if I could do something based within musicals. So this is kind of sort of a starting block for my channel when it comes to musicals. Now I know that there are some people out there who don't really care for musicals. They don't like the idea of songs being sung within a movie or within a play. They think that musicals are just there to enhance the entertainment value. And I understand that point, that a lot of sometimes we see musicals that really do try to up the stakes with the songs. But I still think that musicals do serve a purpose within this day and age. They are still fairly popular. But it kind of depends on what crowd you're talking to. I personally enjoy musicals. However, I'm not such a huge hardcore musical fan, or that I'll defend musicals to the end of my day. And I actually don't listen to musicals all that often. But when I do, these particular musicals come to mind. And I'm basing my favorite musicals list more on their song quality rather on the story itself. I'm not trying to say that one musical is greater than the other, but I will say that these are the ones that I think in particular appeal to me as far as the music is concerned. Not necessarily for any other real hidden reason. And again, I have seen some of these musicals and I do like the stories that go along with it, but since this is a music talk, I'm only going to be briefly discussing my favorite musicals, in particular my favorite musicals that are based upon their songs, and why I think that these ones are the best as far as a soundtrack is concerned. Like the songs go, I think, good with whatever the musical's trying to present. So I'm going to base it off of the musicals themselves and not talk about one song in particular, but all of the songs as a whole when it comes to the musical. So I guess once this video gets started, I can kind of explain to you. But I will start with the first one being Phantom of the Opera. I really enjoy I enjoy every single song within Phantom of the Opera. Now, I know some people might say that this musical within itself is overrated, or the story's overrated, or there's certain aspects that can be considered overrated and maybe overused. Yes, I sort of understand that point, but regardless of that, I just feel like the songs are just so memorable. There's something so powerful with these songs. They really, I think, encapsulate the musical and what the characters are feeling, and sort of brings out what the character thinks or what their mindset is. Music of the Night is a perfect example of the way the Phantom sort of sees the world. The whole masquerade piece is sort of designed to show you the world of the opera and the people there that are part of making the opera possible, and seeing their enjoyment. Even though some songs I think maybe serve more of a purpose than others, they're always enjoyable. I think they're always engaging. There's sort of a beauty to all of their songs, in my opinion. I think a lot of the songs hold up, and they do provide not only a context to the story and points of entertainment, but they do sort of, I guess, encapsulate the feelings that the musical tries to get across. As far as the singing is concerned by Gerard Butler, and yes, I know this is controversial, and yes, some people are going to say that they do not like his performance, and I totally understand that. Personally, I don't have a problem with his performance, actually. I really don't have a lot of issues with all of the different performances that Phantom has gone through over the years. I don't think that matters. To me, at least, I judge this list based more on just the quality of the songs, and I think the majority of these songs fit what the musical is trying to represent. They encapsulate the sort of atmosphere and emotions, and they do sort of have this timeless quality to them. There's something about these songs that just kind of I think can speak to people on many different levels. So regardless of whether or not you like the musical itself, I still think the songs really do offer something that's rather unique and interesting. And I will try to put both versions of the soundtracks, like the musical or the musical stage version as well as the film, because I know there's people who like one or the other or don't care, and I personally don't care. I find them both to be good. I enjoy the performances of the singers, but again, I'm not really judging the musical based on that. I'm just judging it based upon the music itself. So you can choose whichever performer you like. I'll be sure to have them in the description. So that's all I think I can say about Phantom of the Opera. It just has this epicness and this quality that I think can relate to people on various different levels, regardless of the context of the musical. And again, it sort of does well of tying things in with the musical and with a variety of different emotions. So I think it's definitely a powerhouse sort of soundtrack of songs that I think is worthy of listening to. But I think that's really all I can say about this musical. The second musical I want to briefly address is Fiddler on the Roof. This musical, I think, is rather interesting because unlike Phantom, that kind of encapsulates the sort of atmosphere and the drama and the emotions, Fiddler on the Roof really grasps the culture very well. In case you don't know what Fiddler on the Roof is about, basically it revolves around a Jewish family, and we sort of see the cultural frameworks of that family within the songs. They sound like they come from that cultural background, and they do sound like songs that people growing up within that time period and within that culture would sing about. It provides that context in regards to the musical, but it goes beyond that, because you can sort of apply the things that were within the musical that they're talking about sort of into your own life, and there's a lot of different emotions with these various songs. They're not intended to be like powerhouse epic like Phantom of the Opera. They're a little bit more subdued. Man, if I were able to comment under anything when it comes to pointing out things within movies, I that deal with some kind of tradition. I would right on the money always put in tradition, tradition, because it just encapsulates the sort of moral framework of the musical in such a catchy way that you can take it out of the context of the musical and sort of, kind of have fun with it and just sort of roll with all the different songs that are present. I think all of the songs within this musical are fairly strong, and they present really the interesting aspects within the musical well, because they address the things that are very important, and do so in a very cultured way, because again, these songs really do reflect this Jewish culture and this time period as well. So we do see these things being very significant. But I think that's really all I can say about Fiddler on the Roof and what I really enjoy from it. I think that this culture is very interesting, and I like that it sort of embraces that culture, and I think it enhances the understanding of the musical as well as the enjoyment, and I think the songs are really what sticks out when it comes to Fiddler on the Roof as a musical. Now, the third musical that I'm going to mention actually is a rather different musical from these other ones, where we see maybe a little bit of lighthearted moments in both. But Sweeney Todd is a bit different. The Demon Barber of Fleet Street. The reason why I like these songs in particular is that they're very untraditional. They're not the traditional musical where you have a song and it goes on for however long, and it's very different because usually the songs are not that long. If you look at a lot of the songs within Sweeney Todd, but they do serve a purpose in highlighting certain things within the story, and they still provide some genuine passion and emotion, and they really capture that dark aspect that the musical is so well known for. I think this grit that it has can really captivate an audience, even if you're not being shown the performances on a screen. I think it just has that momentum and energy that really brings out the sort of darkness that the film really tries to, or musical technically. Again, you can count the Johnny Depp / Tim Burton / Helen Bonham Carter film, because really they pretty much make this movie. That's really the sort of essence of the musical, is just this very depressing and ugly and dirty environment. It takes that dirty environment and it captures it, and then it shows you things that are within the context of the musical again, which I think is very important for a musical to have context within its songs when it comes to the musical itself. And you will see this with songs like Pretty Women, and that are maybe not as dark, but although they do get dark eventually, there's always some dark kind of undertone within the songs. except maybe By the Sea, but even then, Johnny Depp the whole time is just like this, and you can hear it too, even when you don't listen. You can just hear him barely say anything. So it does kind of bring out what's going on, even if you're not seeing the musical being presented to you. So I think the soundtrack is definitely worth a listen, and the songs are something I think to behold, and they're a lot, they're fairly interesting and approach this darkness to them that is, I think, unique compared to the past two musicals I mentioned. Whereas Phantom of the Opera is sort of a more classic dark. It's kind of like Dracula, because you've got the Phantom. Sweeny is kind of all over the place, and you'll see this within the music. The music doesn't feel, it feels like there's a lot of jagged edges, because again, he's a barber. So I think it only makes sense that this kind of feeling would come out of the music, and I think that's what makes a musical effective, and that's why Sweeney Todd is definitely on this list. Now, the next one I'm going to mention is actually quite the opposite of Sweeney Todd. It's actually fairly traditional. My Fair Lady. These songs are songs that I think a lot of people are familiar with. I Could Have Danced All Night being the most well-known, I think. The reason I think My Fair Lady stands out as far as the songs are concerned is I think there's just this traditional charm to them. They just have this very upbeat kind of energy that I think works for such a musical that it's trying to present, and I think it comes off rather effectively with having this kind of passionate happiness presented throughout the musical. And I think a lot of that comes through these songs that My Fair Lady has to offer. And I think within the context of the musical, it does fit the mood really well. You do sort of see the character that comes out once you hear them sing, and I think that's something that a musical should do, and I think that's something that My Fair Lady does fairly well. Now, the second musical I want to briefly address that I think is probably one of the most well-known, most recently well-known, I'd say, is Wicked. A lot of Wicked songs, I think, stand out in sort of that powerhouse Broadway kind of style. If you look at Wicked and a film like Frozen, you'll sort of see what I'm talking about with this kind of Broadway-esque feel, where it feels like something that you would hear out of Broadway. It just has that Broadway sort of stamp on it, and I think as being one of those kinds of musicals, I think Wicked really works. Unlike Frozen, I think Wicked songs are a lot more memorable, and I think the performances stand out a lot more in something like Wicked, because they really do expose the Broadway, and they do let it shine, and I think that's really what makes the songs work, is because it knows what style it's trying to go for, and it gives it such life and such passion. And I think a lot of that comes through with the story, by having, again, the musical pertain to a lot of what the story within the musical is trying to encapsulate. So it's definitely one of those that I think will probably be around for some time and people will be singing constantly. Maybe it's gotten a bit overrated by some, but or according to some, but for me personally, I don't mind Wicked, at least hearing it once in a while, and I actually did see it on Broadway, so it was definitely a worthwhile and memorable experience, and I think it's definitely one of those musicals worth considering when it comes to the quality of the songs. Now, the second to last musical I'm going to mention is Les Miserables. This is a very tragic musical, as you can just tell by the title, Miserable, miserable. It's definitely not sunshine and rainbows and uplifting, go-lucky Broadway style stuff like Wicked. Its songs are relatively, I would say, relatively similar to Phantom, but I believe, because again they do kind of approach, I think, the more traditional style of musicals. But I think Les Mis is unique because there's a lot of tragedy within the songs, and sort of and at the same time, despite the tragedy, there's also a sense of hope that arises, and you can kind of see how that progresses throughout the entire soundtrack. You know, you kind of start off fairly miserable, and then, you know, things start looking up, and there's kind of this hopey changey thing, you know, not necessarily pertaining to Obama, but again, kind of, you know, that shift that ends up happening. And you do see ultimately the sort of, you know, good triumphing and succeeding in the end. So there is this, I think, steady progression, and I think its soundtrack executes that really well, and I think very effectively. So if you enjoy that kind of progression, then Les Mis will be something that you will enjoy significantly, or at least a significant portion of it, at least, of the soundtrack. But I think that's really all I can say about Les Mis in regards to the songs. Now, the last one I'm going to mention is The Sound of Music. Some might say that this has gotten way too overhyped. It's too smiley, shiny, and sunshine rainbows. And yes, I understand that sometimes it can be a little bit schmaltzy. It's definitely one of those My Fair Lady ones. You know, it's a lot more traditional, and, you know, not as dark or deep or complex. But despite that, I really enjoy its simplicity. I like that it tries to bring in a little bit of culture, sort of similar to Fiddler on the Roof with the song Edelweiss. I like how there is this sort of sense of hope that is presented, and that there is, despite such circumstances, there's always sort of this cheeriness, and the fact that there is this willingness to bring the music to the point of not just being happy-go-lucky, but creating sort of a strong will, because you sort of see within the musical how the characters have to sort of fight back, and the way they fight back is not through darkness like a lot of musicals that I've been mentioning, but it's through optimism and through escaping, because at the end that's really what ends up happening. And I think the interesting thing about The Sound of Music is that it's a lot of it's just the fact that it's just so likable. These songs have just become so ingrained, I think, within our culture that it's hard not to include them, and especially considering the fact that probably in choir at one point you would have to sing doe, a deer, a female deer. You can't help but have that soundtrack kind of ingrained into you. And I think it's only fair to put it in this list of the best musicals when it comes to songs, because the songs all seem to reflect what need to be reflected, and they do so in a way that leaves an impact, I think, on the audience. Regardless of the fact that it might be a little bit too cheery at times. But I think that's ultimately all I can say about all of these musicals that I enjoy. I do enjoy the Broadway versions of a lot of Disney musicals too. However, there's not a huge difference when it comes to the Disney films in general. They may add one or two songs, or maybe 3 or so, but I don't think there is a huge difference. But regardless, these are just more of the general musicals, the ones that involve live action. So again, I would probably be excluding Mary Poppins too, because I mean, I'm sure it was a Walt Disney film before it became a musical production, and I wanted to focus on ones that were only just musical productions at first. But that's, I think, all I can really say. However, if there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a great day, week, month, and year, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Take care.